Hello everyone, welcome to Simple Crochet channel. I'm so glad to be with you in this video. This is the last video of our crochet along project. I'm going to introduce how to join these squares together. As you can see, I used one technique of joining with the white color that I used to do my last two stitches. I'm going to introduce three different methods to join the squares with solving some problems about the sizes of different squares and the problem that you usually face while joining these squares. So as you can see, I used this stitch and I have done half of the blanket, and I'm going to show you how to do these squares. But before starting our video, I want to thank each and everyone who subscribed for the channel, and thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate everything that you do, and I'm just reminding you of the giveaway pattern that I'm going to introduce once I hit the 1k subscriber. So if you still didn't subscribe, please do and like the video so I can get more option with the channel and I can present more pattern and more project for you. Thank you, and let's start. So as I have already said, this video is going to be in 4 parts. The first 3 parts I'm going to introduce 3 different techniques to join the squares, and with each part I'm going to solve a problem that can face anyone with joining these squares. And the first problem I'm going to solve and show you the first technique with these 2 squares, and as you can see, these are not equal size squares, and I have done this on purpose to solve this problem. This is 26 stitches square here, and this is 30 stitches square here, because some of you have done their squares 20 stitches and some of you 25 to match the size of the squares. Besides, this square obviously is not the same size as this square. Some of you faced this problem with some of their squares. How I'm going to fit these 26 with the 30 stitches together to look unified? First of all, I am going to mark the extra stitch on the corner. Remember when I told you you are going to make the border and do 3 stitches on each border? These are the 3 stitches, and I'm going to mark the stitch in the middle from each border, this one and this one, and I should have here 26 stitches, and of course I counted. I'm going to place these 2 squares like this. This is the front and this is the front. This is what I should have in front of me. So I'm using here another color. I'm going to hold this square like this and this square like this, and just do the first stitch. Insert your hook in this stitch and in this stitch like this. So you have these 2 stitches. Make your yarn secure by pulling the yarn through these 2 stitches like this. This is the simplest way, and make a knot so the yarn is secure. You can do more than 1 knot to secure the yarn. I'm going to just move these. Now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep this yarn in the middle between these 2 squares like this, and use the hook and insert it in this stitch of the first square, and just pull the yarn like this to make a loop on the hook. I'm going to use the technique of a slip stitch, but it will create a very beautiful shape for these 2, between these 2 squares. Then just keep in mind to have this yarn, the joining yarn, between these squares under both of them. Then I'm going to find the first stitch here that I joined and insert the hook from the front like this. This is the stitch here, and just insert your hook inside it. I hope this is clear. I am going to insert my hook in this stitch here and just pull the yarn from it like this. I have one loop on my hook, so I'm going to return to this stitch that I knot these two stitches together and insert the hook. But this is the technique of doing this. Your yarn is under your hook. From the front, insert it in this stitch like this and yarn over like this and pull the yarn. The first one is always the hardest one, so you have two loops on the hook. Slip stitch in this loop, so you are left with one. So we have done here one stitch and we have done here one stitch. I'm going to do a zigzag stitch, like I'm going to do another one in here and return to the next square. Your yarn is under your hook. Insert it from the front on both loops. Yarn over, pull through. You have two loops. Slip stitch in this. Return to the next square. Your yarn is under like this. From the front, insert your hook, yarn over, and just pull the yarn through both loops here. And it gets easier each time you do this, like this. From the front, remember that your yarn is under and you are doing this from the front. It will create a very beautiful stitch, and I will show you like this. Return to here and do this. Go in here from the front and do slip stitch like this. Here from the front and slip stitch. Go to here and slip stitch. Go to this stitch from the front and yarn over, slip stitch in it and in this stitch. Go to this stitch in here and insert your hook from the front, yarn over, and slip stitch in this. Now this is the trick about matching the two size squares. I have done here some couples of these stitch, and I do have here in the pink square I have 4 stitches more than this white square. So this is what I'm going to do. I am going to insert my stitch in here in the second stitch here from the front and slip stitch in it, but I'm not going to insert it in this stitch here. I should insert the hook in the next stitch and make a slip stitch. No, I'm going to insert it in the same stitch that I did a slip stitch before, like this. Insert it in here in the same one and yarn over and pull through and do a slip stitch. This will minus 1 stitch from this and it won't appear in here like this. And return to the next stitch here and do a slip stitch and continue working my technique. And after a couple of stitches like this, I'm going to do the same from the front. Keep in mind that you are going from the front on both loops of the stitch of the squares. Again, I am going to repeat the same of what I did. I'm not going to insert my hook in here. I'm going to insert my hook in the same stitch here and make another slip stitch, and keep doing this until you reach the end. I kept doing the same and reached the end, and before reaching the end I want to make sure that my stitches are going to equal each other from here. So I just stopped and count 1 2 3 4 and 5. Here 1 2 3 4 and 5. This should be the case. Then I'm going to continue with you just like this from the front and keep this under and go to the front, from the front, and yarn like this. Just from the front in here, yarn and pull. Here from the front, and as you can see this yarn is under here like this and like this. This is the last stitch in the square, and this is the last stitch here, and insert your hook and just do the last stitch. This is what you should have. See, this square was almost like this in size, like here in size, and we stretched it just to match this square. And if you could imagine doing this from all border, it will just stretch the square and match the size of this square. And if you could see, this technique looks like braids. It's zigzag, and you cannot see the stitches where I have increased, and this is the final look of it. This is how you join two squares together. In your pattern, what you're going to do is just spread the whole squares to match the pattern that you want, and of course I'm going to post different pattern to arrange the squares on the Facebook group to show you how you could just do these stitches together, or you can just use or create your own pattern. I used here the white or the cream color, so I'm going to use the cream color but in diagonal shape, so it will create a diagonal shape all along the whole blanket. My pattern is going to be 10 squares in length and 6 in wide, so I will work all through this. After joining these two, you are going to join these two together. So as I did in these squares, I am going to join these like that. I end my stitch with the cream, so I am going to insert my stitch in this stitch. This is the middle stitch, and just keep the yarn under your square like this, and just insert and pull through. Use the second in here and find the stitch and insert it in, and the yarn is under the stitch in here, and just slip stitch in it, in this one and in this one like this. Of course it's going to be loose, but I will repeat this pattern here, this, like this all along the row, and I am going to show you how you're going to join these so you won't get knots in here. So I have finished the whole row in here and just continued it until the end. This is how I am going to join this part here, the middle or the joint point. I am going to do the same as I did in here. Now I am going to insert my hook in the middle stitch of the 3 stitches here, and in here pull the yarn, knot it, and work the same as I did before, just for this, pull it and just do the same like this. Insert your hook from the front and in here from the front, and keep the yarn under your squares like this. Just keep repeating until you reach the center here. I am almost at the end of my first 2 squares, and I do have the yarn is under these 2 squares, but it's above this part here. And keep the yarn above this part, it will help you to manage your work. And just continue finishing this until you reach the last stitch of your first 2 squares here. This is how I'm going to do. I am going to finish this one here normally, and this one here normally, and then I am going to leave this and insert my hook in here in the stitch from the second square like this, and I do have the yarn above the work. I'm going to grab it from here. Again, I'm going to show you. Now I do have this stitch here. This is the middle stitch of the 3 stitches on the corner, and this is the middle stitch of the 3 stitches in the corner. This is a square 1 and this is a square 2. I am not going to insert my hook in this. I am going to skip it and insert my hook in this stitch here. And bear in mind that the yarn now is above the work, not under it. So I am going to insert my hook and yarn over, it is still above, and pull through this and pull through the loop on the hook. It will create this thing. Then you are going to go to this stitch here and do the same. And the yarn now is under the squares, and you keep repeating, and I will show you in a minute how it will look like, just to secure my work. See? It's not complicated, and it goes with the pattern that we used. Very, very unique way of joining squares, and it even gives very good look of the center of the squares. And you just keep repeating this until you finish, and I will meet you in the second part of the video to introduce another way or another technique of joining the squares.